Okay, yes. So, what we'd done with the walls previously in the autumn, we got these big chunky battens. I think they're the metric equivalent of 3B2s or 2B3s or, some other kind of bebop band. We cut the lengths out, figured out where we needed to notch it, drilled hole in the van, and which was really terrifying, incredibly loud. Like I actually wore earplugs when I did it again this time because it's so loud. It is like the screeching of the banshees of hell. It feels like the whole thing is just gonna blow up or explode in your face or something. Yeah, just terrifying. But yeah, we chiseled everything out, fit it in place, great. Did some tightly bolty goody fun funs. But we forgot to put the insulation back in, which we'd taken out the like soft squishy stuff that I've got stuff in my cavities. Really. So first thing I had to do when I came back to it this time was take off what was there to stuff the insulation to then put it back on. To do this, I had to go and buy a socket set, which is quite exciting. Having it feels like quite a sort of fancy professional type tool that I will now treasure always. So I got stuck in there with that. It was pretty hard to get these nuts and bolts off. Even when you'd removed all the nuts, like the rod was still very happily stuck in place. It was going nowhere. I had to really fight with it to come off, which I suppose is good because it means like even if the nuts loosen off the bolts, what from driving around after years and years and years, it's probably just going to stay where it is anyway because it would rather stay where it is than move. And that's only after like what 6, 7 or 8 months of being sat there. So that's kind of nice, but it took ages. It took like 3 hours or something to take these off and stuff and put them back on again. Kind of easier because I didn't have to drill holes in the van because there were already holes that line up in the ducting or structing or whatever the hell we're going to call that weird melt. But the tricky thing about those was that the wood on top was sitting at an angle, or at least that's the only real sensible way you do it. So I kind of had to drill through to mark out and drill the bottom ones first, and then hold everything in place, and then sort of stick my pencil through and get a rough place where the hole was going to be on the bottom. But then I had to kind of figure out where the angle was. Now somehow for the first one I did it right first time. Like I just absolutely nailed it, and I still have no idea how because the next two were so much harder. But that one just went by like a dream. I just drilled the holes and put it on, and just everything just fit, and I just put it in place. Forgot to put the insulation on before I did though, so I had to take it off again and put the insulation in. And then the next one. This was harder because we chiseled out these extra little holes because there were a bunch of random bolts just sort of sticking out the side of the van. I have no idea why or what they're there for. They don't have anything to do with anything as far as I can tell, but they probably have some kind of purpose. But we didn't need to do that because we kind of forgot that they were going to sit at an angle and not straight. So actually, they're never going to touch those things anyway. But that meant that the places where the holes that lined up in the structy ducty, they lined up with where we chiseled things out, and because of the angle, that meant that the bolt was going to come out of where those holes were, which was really not great. So after already drilling some of the holes and then realizing this and then trying to move them, I realized that one of the places I'd moved it to still had that exact same problem. So I was still gonna have to deal with the issue. So I ended up drilling like 5 holes, and I drilled them in the wrong angle. I had to redo them, and it was just a total fight and a total nightmare. But I eventually got everything on, and then I realized I hadn't put the insulation in, so I had to take it off again. You'd think I'd learn on the third time, but I didn't. One at the front, a little bit easier, a little bit smaller, a little bit easier to kind of wield. I did a little bit of extra chiseling to kind of make it sit a little bit better. The first one was relatively easy, although because I had them both sort of at their fattest, the bars that I had cut, the steel rod, almost didn't fit with the two bolts that I was using for extra security. Luckily it did, because I used the two longest ones that I'd cut, because I wasn't going for like maximum precision, because it didn't really matter that much. So it did work out. I didn't remember to put the insulation in though. So yes, that's literally every single one. I didn't remember to put the insulation in. However, this time I did not take it off again. I just figured out how to stuff it through the little holes. I just stuffed it through the holes. And maybe I should have done that for the rest of them, to be honest, because it probably was a little bit easier, if a bit fiddly. It was still doable. And taking them off is almost harder than putting them on, because they just seem to sort of like seize up and everything. It just becomes like this unit. They are solid. So yeah, the bottom one again caused major issues because of the angle. I don't know how I did it right the first time. I really have no idea. I took so much fighting to get the other two done, but did it. Got there. Put it in place. It's not great. It's a bit. It's sort of slid forward again. I don't know how I lucked out so hard in the first one, but my ultimate strategy with this is like, the thing is not remotely square. It's full of round edges and wonkiness and weirdness that you have to account for. So, I'm not gonna make it square. Like the things I add are not gonna fix that problem. So everything that I do is gonna have to be ununiform and made to order and a bit wrong and a bit wonky, and it's just gonna be like that. Big ol' wonk. That's for show. I've spent a lot of time on the van over the past few weeks, but yeah, it doesn't really feel like that much has happened. However, I've got to grips with so much. I've been going deep, deep, deep into the electronics and, getting my head around stuff like this, which at first looked terrifying and now makes perfect sense, and that is crazy. And like, there's just so many interdependencies. Like to do the ceiling in any meaningful way. Well, to do the walls requires you to do the ceiling. To do the ceiling requires you to know where your wiring's going to do, where your wiring's going to go. So to know how that's going to happen, you need to figure out exactly where you're going to put pretty much every single piece of electronics in the van. And I am having a really electronics heavy build, so it's a lot of stuff, and I have to figure out and map it out. And I've drawn like big tubular diagrams that show where everything's going, because I need to figure it all out. And I've now bought all the conduit and all the cable, and like, I'm starting to have a ridiculous pile of stuff to use, but I also need to go and get more wood. And that was one thing. The last time I used my van before lockdown, I came home and found a brake pad, a hot brake pad behind my van after I'd parked up. And yes, it wasn't meant to be like that, and the brakes were, yes, in a bad place. So I've been waiting to get that fixed. I mean, that is fixed, but he found a missing bearing on the other side that had to be ordered. Yeah, so once I've got that, I can actually go and buy wood and kind of carry on, because I need wood to do the next bit. I'm going to do the ceiling next, because I think the ceiling's fairly self-contained. You get the wiring in there, there's not that much else to do. I do a bit of devising and do the boards, do the clady boards like I got on the floor, and then it's all good, baby. But the walls are like, I don't know. I'm gonna put in a lot more battens than what I've already got, because I think it's just gonna be really helpful rather than having really specific places that I can attach things to. I will have nice, meaty, frames of things, and they'll just be wood everywhere that I might want there to be wood to screw into, which will be nice. And it's starting to make sense how I'm going to do that. And I've figured out how I'm going to do the insulation and stuff. I've conceded to using a little bit of spray foam. I didn't want to do it, but it's just the easiest way to cement everything in. I don't have to use loads. I don't have to go crazy. I didn't want to do it because of the fact that I thought I was going to make a mess. The fact that it was very permanent, and I thought I was probably going to do things wrong and have to deal with it. But the fact is I've had to do that with loads of other stuff. It's not like it's any better. Like I could, my friend thought I could probably stick it up there with silicone, but like silicone's that's a nightmare. The getting off of the roof was horrible. So what's the difference? I might as well just use a spray foam, which I know works because I've seen numerous people do it. So a little bit of that, stick up the insulation on the walls, a little bit of that, stick up the insulation on the ceiling. It's starting to feel like it's actually going to be a thing. I can make sense out of a lot of the different parts of it. I'm even starting to make some beginnings of sense of how to do the furnishings, or start building out like cupboards and the bed and the housing for the batteries and where the electrics are going to go. Like all this stuff you kind of have to figure out in advance, like in way advance of actually doing it. And I think that's one of the hardest things about it from a real noob perspective. Like when you don't know anything, I think I'm going to do like a separate video talking about just how difficult I found all of this, because I have come across channels where they've expressed how difficult it is. Plenty have said it in passing. Oh yeah, it was pretty hard. I wanted to quit a lot of points, but it was great. I don't really go into any detail about just how difficult it is, and maybe they had an easier time. Like maybe their brains are wired in a way that makes it easier to deal with all of the lack of knowing things and certainty. So maybe it'll just be an insight from a person with my brain. I don't know. I think I'm gonna definitely be trying to go for a very honest portrayal of van existence, van build, van life to whatever extent that I do it, as I probably am not really going to be full time, but I want to be drifting in that direction as much as I can. I think, I don't know. It's definitely not going to be some Instagram style van life thing. Like it's just not. I don't look nearly good enough in a bikini for that. I look alright in a dress though. We can get a picture of that up, can't we? Yeah, we can do that, I think. So yeah, like join me in my terrible makeshift journey that might just maybe produce something at the end of it that's actually pretty cool, and I'm pretty excited about, and hopefully talking from a noob such as myself will help someone out there. So if you like the video, or maybe if you like me, you can hit the like button. Maybe you can even subscribe. That would do magical things to my inner heart beams. But I'm not expecting anything. Hey, yeah. So that's that. And next time there'll be other things. I don't even know what's going to be next time, because I don't know. Maybe I'll be doing the solar panels because I still don't have wood to do the roof, and I do kind of need to do the solar. Well, we'll figure it out. We're gonna do the thing. It's gonna be fine. Why? See you later. See you. It's fine. It's cool. Don't worry about it. Don't worry.